remember him coming into the home and doing a home visit, and him saying, "Hey, I can promise you 4 things. You're going to play with great teammates. You're going to get a chance to play for championships. You're going to get your degree, and you're going to have a friend for life." And not only did he do those 4 things, AJ, he did so many more than that. But to have a coach come and now I see it because I've been recruiting for 30 years, and you recruit against other coaches, some ethical, some not ethical, but promises are made to these young men that they just don't happen. And being a friend for life, now that coach is getting ready to be 80 and I turn 56 next month, knowing that that college coach I can still call up and get advice from and just have a friend, that's something that is really meaningful. And I couldn't have, I look back, I'm so blessed, AJ. I don't know how I could have scripted my college career any better. And obviously coach had enormous amount to do with that. Back in the day, it was still amateurs that made the Olympic team. And I ended up having a fairly successful freshman year, and I got invited to the Olympic trials. There was only 77 people, and I was just excited to be invited. But now my college coach is the coach. At that time, a lot of the foreign competition were playing zones. And I ended up making that team just because I could shoot the ball, and probably because I could help navigate for the other guys, the other Olympians, of playing for Coach Knight in a short amount of time. And that would have never happened to me being somewhere else. So I'm just very, very thankful that I got the opportunity to play for Coach at Indiana.
Now, you could, like you said, you couldn't script it any better. I mean, you were the measuring stick, and you still are the measuring stick. And most are going.
Well, it wasn't easy, and it wasn't. When I got there,
absolutely, I know that.
When Todd and Daryl and I came to Indiana, by the time we became seniors, we were on the brink of being Coach's first recruiting class not to win a Big Ten. And that was really on our minds because we'd finished second twice. We'd been awfully close, and we'd had some good years. We made it to Elite Eight. We'd done some good things, but you didn't want to be the first recruiting class not to win a Big Ten. And it went down to the final game of the year. Purdue had to get blown out at Michigan, and we had to beat Ohio State at home, and we ended up tying Purdue and we got a co-championship. And I really think, AJ, that ended up leading to really helping the run for the national title because there was pressure taken off of Daryl, Todd, and I can remember going out after that game, beating Ohio State with those guys. Were like, wow, what? Just the pressure that got off of us that now we'd won a Big Ten title. And I thought we played a lot looser than those 6 games that we had in the national tournament.
And unfortunately for me, there always has to be a first, and I ended up being the first class, one of the first classes that didn't win a Big Ten.
I shouldn't have brought that up. I apologize. I apologize. But for me, it went down to the last day, so it almost happened.
It's a tear forming right here.
Yeah, I understand.
Because honestly, I always look at that. And I'm like, damn, if we'd have just won one, things would have been a lot different and how it ended at Indiana. So we bear that kind of burden, and I don't lose sleep over it. But it's something. When I see you, I see Isaiah, and I'm like, we gave it and I want to kind of segue into that a little bit but when during that time period, I know you probably were coaching, but you always have an eye on your alma mater. And we just couldn't click. We were losing McDonald's All-Americans. We lost Jason Collier, Neil Reed, Luke Recker, and just a lot of things were happening. From an outside perspective, from a former player perspective, what did you see that was different about that time period that those teams and those opportunities, we just couldn't get over the hump? And I think the game was starting to change a little bit. I know when you first started playing, I think the three-point line was in 87.
Right, my last year.
Your last year. So it wasn't, but at this time, everybody was running to the line. So the defensive strategies now were different, but we were kind of still doing the same thing. From your perspective, what did you see different in those teams that were different than your Big Ten championship teams and national championship teams? Yeah,
and it wasn't just Indiana. I think just the game started to evolve. When I was in my 4 years, we didn't have a three-point line.
Yeah.
If you can remember the year before the three-point line came in, the ACC, Sam Perkins was killing that. They had a three-point line in the ACC that was underneath the top of the key. It was like 17 feet. So Sam Perkins was like killing that thing. So but we had 3 shot clocks. When I got there as a freshman, we had no shot clock. Then there was a 45. Then there was a 40. Then it was a 35. So the rules kept changing for me. So the time you got there and others, everybody started figuring out the 19-9 3-point line and the 35-second shot clock. Those rules kind of changed the game, I think, from spacing, coach being a motion team. You know, when I was there, it was like, you better make 4 passes. You better get 2 ball reversals. You better get that thing moving. And 30 seconds, you brought in the, you know, all the rules coming from the top. All of a sudden, using pick and rolls. Like my 4 years in college, I don't know if I had to defend 2 pick and rolls, and I don't know if I was ever in a pick and roll.
Right.
So now it's like it's a pick and roll.
It's all different.
You know, so I think rules start changing. And then the other thing that started happening, like you said, with coach, guys started leaving for the pros, and we didn't have any of that. We didn't have any of that thing growing up. You know, Keith Smart didn't leave early. You know, Dean Garrett didn't leave early. Darryl didn't leave early. There was nobody in my 4 years that we even thought was going to leave early. So I think those things changed because coach is such a culture guy. Coach is such a build a program guy. And I think when those things start happening to a lot of programs, you end up getting a, you know, just the turnover of players affects guys that are really into developing a 4-year culture and program. I think that affects a lot of programs. Great
points. Halfway through, man, and I want to get to this, what I call Hoosier 10. It's just 10 questions that you'll be able to answer for the Hoosier Nation community. First question is, what dorm did you live in on campus?
Beck. I lived in Beck for a year.
Right.
For a year, and then I moved off campus and spent my last 3 years in Jackson Heights Apartments.
Okay, back then they didn't know we were but we were required to stay in a dorm our freshman year as freshmen.
Yeah, that's the way we were. Yeah,
when was the last time you were in Bloomington?
This past summer, I took my dad down. I came back in for the 4th. Normally, I have a basketball camp that now we're moving to Huntington University because my oldest son, just got the head coaching job at Huntington University. So we're going to move that from Central Indiana, where we've had it all these years, to now up to Huntington. But I came back, even though COVID canceled all the camps. I got to spend 2 weeks around the 4th of July. My dad's birthday is the 3rd of July. So we came back to do some family stuff. I took dad down to see coach right around the 4th of July. So
awesome.
I get down, when I get down to see him, or you know, there's a lot of guys still in that area. Todd lives up in northern Indiana. Joe Hillman's right there in the Indy area. Brian Sloan as well. Jeff Oliphant's still in there. So I got a lot of teammates that are kind of still right there. So every now we get together. I got back for I think the Players Alumni event 2 years ago, not last year, but 2 years ago. So I don't get there a lot just because I'm out west.
You're working,
and then when I go home, I usually see my brother and his family, or I'm seeing Tanya's brother is still in Newcastle. So it's usually Newcastle or the lake where my mom and dad live.
Okay, great. What's the favorite place to eat when you go back?
Yeah, that's a hard one. I don't make anybody mad. So that's a hard one. But like if I only got back to Bloomington for like an hour or two, if that just gave me one thing, it's going to be a Nick's Stromboli. If I can get the Stromboli and Nick's, I'm pretty good.
Awesome. Who was your toughest matchup in college?
Yeah, Gary Grant.
Gary Grant. You said that on the interview.
Yeah, Gary Grant at Michigan. And when I got the UCLA job, I moved to Calabasas. And I hadn't seen Gary in years. We'd disconnected just because he was in the NBA. I was coaching different spots, and we'd kind of gotten apart. But I'm sitting at the Calabasas car wash, and there's a guy 2 chairs in front of me waiting, and I got my oldest son Corey with me, and I go, Corey, that's Gary Grant. I know that's Gary Grant, but I couldn't see him. He's bald now, and you know, we all get older, and I couldn't see him. But when you played against somebody that just gave you fits, and you had to, I studied film on him religiously, and it took really till my senior year to where I had good games against him, because he was one of those long athletic guys that used his athleticism, and he had that mindset. I'm stopping you. And there were a lot of guys that might have had that mindset, but through cutting, through doing what I did, they would eventually just fall off. Gary was just one of those guys that it was all the time. But I finally had to wait till he spoke at that car wash. I said, Corey, that's Gary Grant. And then we started talking, and But by far, I had a lot of guys that were hard to compete against in the Big Ten, but Gary Grant was the toughest guy I had to go against.
Absolutely. And was the toughest place to play in the Big Ten on the road?
Yeah, that's hard. Again, the Big Ten's changed from when you and I were there. There were teams that, don't make sense to me, but
right.
I'm old school. But when I played versus coaching changed it. But when I played, obviously Purdue was a hard place to play. Yeah. Michigan was a hard place to play. Mm-hmm. And I thought Illinois was a really hard place because in my tenure at Indiana, my 4 years, the teams that were the best were Illinois, Michigan, and Purdue. Those were the three best year in, year out. And late in my career, Iowa, the new Carver Hawkeye, that became that was always place to play.
What it was about that.
Yeah. But I always liked the older gyms. I liked Wisconsin's older gym. I liked St. John's Arena at Ohio State much better than the new one. Yeah. I love the barn up in Minnesota. That was fun too. But Michigan, Illinois, Purdue, night in, night out, those were the hardest road games we had to play.
In succession with that question, is there a place you never won on the road?
I don't think we won. I don't think I won at Purdue.
At Purdue,
4 years. I might. I don't know if we won at Purdue. Mm-hmm. I'd have to look back. But
we'll fact check that.
That's the one that hits because I know I didn't have that. I think the only team that we didn't have a winning record against was Purdue because I don't think we beat them there, and they beat us. The game coach threw the chair.
Yeah. You was in that game?
I was a part of that, and that was Purdue, and we lost that home game. So
what was going through your mind when you saw this dude throw this chair across the floor?
Well, I didn't know at the time, but it was because of me. There was a loose ball, and I got a loose ball, and he thought Purdue fouled me, and they either called a jump ball or they called a foul on me, and that's kind of what. There was a lot. We weren't playing very well that year, so there was a lot boiling up in coach, and I think that's probably. He says there was some old lady he was throwing. In my mind, it was my fault.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So I'm just standing at the timeline. And you know how that is, AJ. I'm just standing at the timeline, and then when he gets kicked out, I'm like, oh,
yeah.
At some point, I gotta go back in that locker room. So
absolutely, he probably throwing it at you.
I'm just worried about that.
So, is that your most memorable Bob Knight moment?
No, I think it's probably most memorable maybe for the fans because there was 17,000 people in there, and they got to see that. But as you know. The practices was the one that I look back and we talk about as former players now the most because coach just had that ability to you just couldn't take a day off. And that's what I appreciate. You may not do it you may not appreciate when you're playing for him, but now coaching for 30 years and seeing how he made me a better player, he just never took it was on the gas pedal all the time. I can remember having games where I dropped 30 on somebody, and the next day it was like I got 2 buckets.
Exactly.
And then I had a bad game, and it was the same. The thing I appreciate about Coach, he was so consistent. It wasn't you didn't all of a sudden show up, and he was very funny. People see the humor side in Coach. Now, when it's on you, you're probably not laughing, but the rest of the team is, and it's going to rotate. But I love his competitiveness. I love his consistency, and he made you I always say this, even when you didn't want to be better, he made you better. And that is an incredible trait for a coach. But the practices were but as you know, we had some wild plane rides. We had some wild bus rides. If I had a most memorable thing, we got that airport on the side of town there where we'd always fly out of. And I had made the mistake of posing for a calendar for a sorority for a charitable girls organization. I thought I was doing a good thing and ended up in an NCAA violation. So I got suspended for the Kentucky game. And I asked Dan Dockage, I said, am I supposed to go on the trip? And Dan's like, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you, but you probably need to be on the bus.
Right.
Because if you're not on the bus to the airport, then it could be. So I listened to Dan, I get on the bus, and how Coach got some superstitions to him. And as you know, when you get off the bus, he hits you on the back. He just kind of hits you on the back as you go off the bus because he's the last one to get off the bus. And I'll never forget, I get that pat on the back, and then I get the coat. And he's like, what are you doing on this bus? You're not going. And I'm like, okay, coach, I just didn't know. And he goes, find your own way back.
Right. Wow.
So now I'm like, okay, I'm supposed to walk back from that airport. That's like 15 minutes, 20 minutes away if you're in a car. And I'll never forget our bus driver. I see the plane go through the clouds on the way to Lexington, and I'm walking up this road, and the bus driver pulls up next to me and just opens up the door and goes, hey, you need a ride? I said, yeah, it's freezing. I need a ride. So there's a lot of memories that you have that kind of shape you and mold you as you get older. And I've always appreciated, although I didn't appreciate it at the time, I've always appreciated how honest, fair, and consistent Coach was.